Hello, welcome back. This is Jennifer and I am glad you're here. Today I'm sharing with you one of my favorite coloring hacks. If you are looking to make a bunch of cards, say for the holidays, this is a great technique for coloring them in quickly. Now, some people like to just spend the time with their markers and color them in, but me, I want to get the coloring done quick with a little bit of shading, and I find that's best if I use ink and inking tools. With this coloring hack, you can make lots of the same card, many of them. I'm making a handful today of 3 different designs, but know this works with a variety of outline stamped images that you may have. I have lots of tips and tricks to share with you along the way, so let's get started. For all of my cards today, I will be using the new Simon Says Stamp Tim Holtz STAMPtember collab bundle. Now, this is one of those bundles when it's sold out, it's gone forever, but Tim Holtz does have a lot of stamps with this similar style that would work great for this technique, and I'll link to some of those below. Now, in this bundle itself, you get the stamp set with all of these cling stamp images. There are quite a few in here. And there are 2 small stencils included in the bundle. You can see them there on the screen. Also in the bundle, you get a sparkle paste and a glow paste in a mini version of them. So the bundle includes a stamp set, 2 stencils, a sparkle paste, and a glow paste. Now, I am only using the stamp set today. I wanted to make a bunch of 1-layer cards with this coloring hack, and I thought the stamp set was perfect. However, do know that as part of STAMPtember, this is all sold together. Now, if you want to try the coloring hack I'm sharing today, you can use a variety of outline images. And you'll be able to see as I'm going what type of outline images would work the best, but really you could make any of them work. Now, if I were to make cards using these images and color in all the different areas with different colors, it would take me quite a bit of time, especially because I'm not that great at coloring. However, with today's hack, I'm able to quickly color them and get beautiful shading with very little effort. Okay, let's get started by making a bunch of this Santa card. I thought that Santa was so cute, so we had to start with him. I have my MISTI stamping tool, and I'm taking the Santa image along with just some heavyweight white cardstock, and I'll stamp that with a coloring-friendly ink. I'm using Gina K Obsidian Black Amalgam ink. This ink works with whatever color medium you may want to do, such as Copic markers, inking, watercolor, colored pencils, and more. So I reach for this ink often. Now I'm just stamping this in the center of a heavyweight cardstock. I'm using white because it's easier to see in the video, but any heavyweight cardstock would work. You could even use a scrap. Now this is definitely the part of this coloring hack that might chase some of you away, but bear with me. Just bear with me. You'll see why it's worth it. I'm starting by cutting out the top of his outfit. So I'm leaving the legs in place. I'm leaving the arms in place. It's just kind of like his torso that I'm cutting out. I'm just cutting along that black outline. So you can see I went right along the bottom of his shirt. I'm cutting underneath his elbow, underneath the beard. This little beard has like that little jagged edge. I'm just kind of cutting back and forth. This doesn't have to be cut perfectly. It doesn't seem like it, but it'll still work. And a little tip, I try to cut on towards the outside edge of the black outline. It just will end up giving you better coloring results. So notice how I have just cut out the top of his outfit. Now on another one of the panels, I will cut out his legs. You'll see that I come in from the side, I do that long cut there to get to the legs, doesn't matter. We'll take care of that later. So here I'm just quickly cutting out his legs, trying to cut towards the outside of that black outline. I'm going to continue to do some more cutting of different areas on the Santa image. I'll do some off screen. Now, if you look here on the top right, on that panel, I cut out the legs and the bag full of present. So I'll be able to color those 2 areas with that one panel. The top middle, I did his hat and the torso of his outfit. That left-hand one there, so far I've only cut out his arm. I'll come back to that in a moment. I do like to put a little piece of Scotch tape on the back of that cut line that I take from the edge to the image, just to make sure that what we end up with are just these solid masks that we can use over and over again. Now, if you're not getting this so far, don't worry, it all makes sense in a moment. Now from this one here, I did cut out both of the arms so that I would be able to color both arms very quickly. I need another panel here where I can cut out his beard because I want that to be kind of like a light, super light gray. So I'll cut out the beard from this panel. Any kind of small fussy cutting scissors work well. These are from Simon Says Stamp. I like those. And I also like the small Tim Holtz scissors. Okay, so now we have these 4 panels here. And between them all, they add up to color in this whole Santa image. Minus the face and a few other things. I'll talk about those later. But here we'll be able to quickly color his arms, his beard, his hat, his torso, and his bag full of presents. Now, cutting these out wasn't much fun, but it really didn't take that long. And here's the thing, these are 4 templates that I can keep and make cards with this image over and over and over. It's definitely worth the effort. Okay, next I have my MISTI stamping tool, and I have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch top folded white note card. I also have a placement guide, that's the clear grid piece from Simon Says Stamp. Wanted to show you a trick on how to test out the placement of your stamp images. I put that clear grid on top of my note card, and I'm positioning my Santa image along with a sentiment. Now, since this is cling, I want to make sure that it stamps straight. It's kind of hard to tell sometimes with cling. So what I like to do is stamp first on this clear placement guide. I'm using that Gina K black amalgam ink. I'll stamp it on the guide and I'll look. And look, I lucked out. My stamp images are straight. Santa's hanging off this left edge of the card, but that's what I wanted. I really just wanted to make sure that sentiment was straight. So I'm happy with the results, so I can just wipe that ink off that placement guide. And now I can start stamping on my note cards. Now the note card that I have here, I made from Brutus Monroe, Not Your Mama's cardstock. This is an ultra heavyweight white cardstock that I like to use, especially when I'm making a 1-layer card, just to make the card feel very substantial. And actually my templates were made from that same cardstock, but you really could use whatever cardstock you're comfortable with. This Brutus Monroe is very heavyweight, very high quality. In fact, you can color with Copic markers on it and it likely won't bleed through. But this is top folded 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, and I will stamp this on a bunch of note cards. So you could make as many as you want. I think I made 10 or 12 of these, but the templates I created could be used to make many, many more. So I kept them on hand for the future. Okay, now time for the fun part. Let's do the coloring hack. I have a sticky mat here. I just find that very helpful. This is the Brutus Monroe Simon Says Stamp and Stencil mat. And I'm opening up my card and sticking it onto the mat. Now you can start with any of the templates you made. I thought I would start with the first one that will color in his torso and the hat. So I'm lining up the template over my card, and that sticks to the mat too. Everything's held in place. I also thought I would use a little bit of masking tape so that I don't accidentally ink off the right edge of the template. I don't want it to be too sticky, so I stick it on my arm first and then place it down onto the card. So now you can see the template, the Santa template, is lined up with the stamped Santa on the front of our card. Now over this, you can do whatever ink blending you want with whatever inking tools you want and whatever inks you want. I am mostly using Tim Holtz Distress Ink today because they blend like butter, but use whatever you prefer. Here I'm using a foam ink blending tool. However, I do end up switching to a brush blending tool simply because I just have become more accustomed to using them. Now over this template opening, I covered it with festive berries, and then I came in with Lumberjack Plaid, which is a bit darker, and I'm applying that kind of towards the bottom of the hat opening and towards the top of the torso opening. That'll give me a little shading. So here, look how quickly I was able to color in those 2 parts of that image. Now you could go on to the other parts, but what I like to do is go and do this on all of my cards. So I just line the template back up and then start blending. Now I will show variations of how simple or complex you can do this coloring. All of them are still pretty quick and simple, but I wanted to show you the different options. This is one of those techniques where you can keep it simple and basic, or you could step it up. So there I used a Simon Says Stamp blending brush to put down the lighter festive berries. And here I'm coming in with a smaller Altenew mini blending brush to add a little bit of that darker lumberjack towards the base of the hat and at the top of the torso. Keep in mind that you could just use one shade of red over this opening and it would be good to go. But if you want to add that little bit of shading, I'll share some tips. Now, another thing you can do is go super light with your first red color. So here I'm putting a very light amount of Festive Berries down. Then I will come in with the darker Lumberjack and put a lot of that at the base of the hat, top of the torso, and that'll give me a little more contrast, a little more blending, and the look of a little more depth, I guess you would say. Another way you could step this up is to start with the lightest red and put that down. Notice I'm not taking much effort to blend this. Distress inks blend very well on their own, and this is a small area. So I did the light red, the darker red. One thing you can do here is come in with a brown or a gray and add that to the areas where you want it to be the darkest. Now, this is something that I decided to do on all of my Santas, and I went back and added it to all of them. So that little bit of brown doesn't take much time or effort, and I really feel like it steps up that look of dimension in our image. I think it makes a big difference. But what I wanted to demonstrate here is you can keep this very simple by doing one color of red, or you can step it up by doing a little bit of shading. Doesn't take much more time, but it makes a big difference in the end result. You can see how this template is getting very inky, but because I used a heavyweight cardstock for it, it doesn't bleed through. And I can use it over and over and over. You could make your template out of acetate or a masking material, but really in the end, cardstock's great because the ink doesn't get wet on the top of the cardstock, so you don't have a messy template. It just really does a great job as long as you use something heavyweight. So I did decide to go back to all of my first Santas and add that template again and do a little bit of that dark brown ink at the base of the hat and kind of at the top of the torso because I like that result. But if I were to go back and make more of these, I would do these 3 inks on all of them from the get-go, and it wouldn't take long at all. So let's look at our template. You can see that it's inked up, but I can still use it much more. And it hasn't bled through because I used that heavyweight cardstock. So I'll just set this aside, keep it with the stamp set in case I want to make more of these later. All right, now let's move on to another part of the Santa using one of the other templates. Now this template is for his arms. I could have cut out the arms and inked them up on the same template as I did for the body and the hat, but I wanted his arms to be a little lighter. Again, I'm going for the look of dimension on this one layer image. So on this one, I'm just doing a light amount of Festive Berries, and then I will add a little bit of the Lumberjack. That's it. I didn't do the brown. I kind of kept this lighter so that they would have a little more of a highlight look to them over the rest of his little suit and his hat. And I'll continue to do this on all of them. Notice how easy it is to line up that template on your card each time. Now I am going through and putting my card down, using a template over, and then moving to the next card, using a template over it, go on to the next card. Another option would be to put your card down, do the first template, the second template, the third template, and then finish the coloring on that one card before you move to the next. It really just depends on how you want to create and work. I have a messy desk. I don't have much room for a bunch of colors of ink sitting out at the moment, so this seemed better for me. Just give it a try. You'd be surprised how easy this is. Now it's time for his beard. This is super easy. I will put the template that has the beard cut out on top. And notice the sticky mat holds the note card and that template in place. And I will put a piece of tape just so I don't accidentally over ink the edge of that mask. Now over this, I'm using Lost Shadow, one of the greatest Tim Holtz colors of all time. It's a light gray that is just perfect. And this is super fast. I'm not actually inking up the whole area. I'm just inking up towards his face and fading out to white at the bottom. So I will easily and quickly be able to add that touch of gray to all of the Santa beards. Now I do want to mention again, you could use any inks you want for this. This is not really about the type of ink you use, but more the color that you want for the coloring. So just grab whatever color ink you like best for the particular parts of your image and use that. Okay, my next template does the bag and the legs of the Santa. And I originally thought I was going to make the bag red, but that was way too much red on the image. So I decided to change it to brown. So over this template, I'm doing 2 different colors in the different areas. Over the bag, I'm using Gathered Twigs, my favorite brown color, and I'm putting it heavier towards the right side of that opening and lighter towards the top left side. Notice that I also did cut out the little patches on the bag. You can see there's a little piece of cardstock there stuck to my template. I'm just tucking my card under it to cover up that patch area to mask it off, then put my mask on top of it and color that with brown. You could just leave the patches brown if you wanted to, really doesn't matter, but I wanted to make those patches red, so I put that little cut out mask of the patches on my sticky mat. So watch, I'll pull the card out, tuck the next card under, cover up those little patches on the stamp image, and we can do the brown ink over this. So I only did one brown color over this. The gathered twigs, I just put it heavier towards the right and the bottom and lighter towards the top and the left. Then we have the legs. For the legs, I am using Lumberjack Plaid, and then I put a little bit of the brown at the top of that, just to make it look darker there under the legs. Really, you can do one color over these, I promise you can, but I love that look of dimension. So after I use these templates on the images, there are just a few other places to add color. You could definitely create templates for those little areas, but because they're so tiny, I thought it would be just as fast to use a quick coloring with marker. So for the face of Santa, I just chose 2 Copic markers that would work for skin tone. I put shading with the darker and then colored over the whole thing with the lighter. See how fast that is? This is a small area. It doesn't need great coloring. It doesn't need great shading. So using the markers worked. If I would have used markers for the bigger areas, like the torso or that bag, it would have taken me a lot longer. Using the template hack definitely was a time saver. So I colored the face of all the Santas, and then I also did add a little bit of light gray shading to the white on his hat and along the bottom of his little outfit there. Don't need to do that at all. You could totally skip it if you wanted. All of these final details could be skipped to save time if you want to. I just really appreciate those details. All right, now I'm using a black marker to color over the belt. The belt was colored red. I'm just doing a quick fill-in with a black marker. I end up going back and doing a black glaze pen over some of these, but at this point I thought I was just going to use the solid black. Now for the patches on the bag, you could definitely use markers to quickly color those in. You could have inked them brown earlier, but what I decided to do was go back to one of my templates, cut out the patch area so that I can quickly just ink blend with red ink over that opening. The reason I chose to do this is I could use the same red ink that I used to color Santa's suit, and it'll be a perfect match. I was having trouble finding a red marker that would match perfectly. So this is another great thing about this. You don't have to search for the different colors of markers that you want. Just use the same ink for everything. Now our image is colored in, but if you like the details like I do, here are a few things I added. I used my black glaze pen to add a little black to the eyes, the buttons, and the belt. That will give you a teeny bit of dimension and a lot of shine. And I also used a gold gel pen to color in the buckle on his belt. So you get into a rhythm where you do this for each of the cards and set it aside to dry. And these little details just kind of make the image stand out more because this will give us a little bit of shine. Another option would be to use a touch of glossy accents for the eyes, the buttons, and the belt, but that takes a little bit longer to dry. So at this point you could stop because look at that Santa. You got a lot of look of dimension to him. It's a 1-layer card, easy for mailing, and it looks like you spent a lot of time coloring it. But I thought I would use some of the other fun images in the stamp set to add some interest to the background. Again, you could totally skip this. I have my sticky mat in my MISTI stamping tool, and I'm placing my card on right inside of that rectangle line that is on the sticky mat. Around my Santa image, I'm placing some of the other images from the Tim Holtz stamp set, and I'm placing them close to my sentiment and the Santa. I am stamping this with Simon Says Stamp Fog ink, which is a very light gray. This will be very subtle. It'll be hard to see in the video, but in real life, it's just a touch of interest in the background. Now mine needs re-inking, so I had to stamp it a few times, but I'll continue to do this on all of the cards. Each time I'll put my card in that same spot, that rectangle guide in the middle of the sticky mat. Now another ink option you could use here if you want it to be a bit darker is Lost Shadow. That's the Tim Holtz gray that I used for Santa's beard. It would just stamp a bit darker, totally up to you. So after I stamp those images on all of my cards, I will remove the stamps and reposition them. Notice I'm starting at Santa and working my way out to fill in the background of the card. So I'm just stamping these images repeatedly to fill in that white space. The reason I chose to do this is I really like these images. There are a lot of great images in this stamp set that work well together, and this was a great way to incorporate some of them into this card. Another thing you can do with these small images is stamp them on the flap of your envelope. I didn't do that in today's video, but you definitely could. So here are the cards that I ended up with. I am definitely going to go back and make more of these because this Santa just makes me happy. I matched it up with a red metallic envelope from Simon Says Stamp, which really pops our coloring even more. So here's a closer look. You can see the shine from the black glaze pen and that easy shading that we did with this coloring template hack. And we have all of those additional images stamped in the background that aren't too distracting, but add to the fun of the card. So this is a one-layer card. It'll mail beautifully, and you could use this technique to create holiday tags instead if you prefer. With these cards, the focus is really on that Santa image and how we colored him in. On the next set of cards, I did a more layered card and kept the coloring very simple on the snowman. So this is just another way to use this coloring hack. For these cards, my snowman and sentiment will be stamped onto a smaller rectangle. I cut a bunch of those rectangles and I'm doing the stamping now. So these will be the pieces that are added to our card. Now I created my templates off screen just to save some time. There aren't many with this card because there's not as much to color. So the first mass template has an opening cut for the center part of that snowman. I'll place it over my snowman and I'm applying a very light amount of blue ink towards the top of that opening, fading to white at the bottom. I want very little ink on this. I don't want a blue snowman. I just want a look of depth to it. Now the second template is actually on the same piece. This has the top of the snowman and the bottom of the snowman cut open. I could have done all three cut together, but I really wanted to ink up each of the parts of the snowman individually to get that true kind of shading look. You could also use like that Simon Says Stamp fog ink from before for this, or the Lost Shadow, but I like that little softness of blue. So I will do this to all of my snowmen. I'll do the middle part of the snowman and the top and the bottom of the snowman. This template will hold up for a long time and I can keep it for future use. Okay, so let's move on to the broom and the hat. Now ignore the snowman over there on the right. I'm only going to use the one on the left. And I have cut out the top of the broom. And here I'm cutting out most of his hat. Notice I'm not cutting all the way to the bottom of his hat because I wanted to add a pop of red along the bottom of the hat. You'll see here in a moment. So I am just cutting out most of the hat, leaving a little bit of the bottom of the hat uncut. You'll be able to see it right there. Okay, so with this template, I can color the top of the broom and most of his hat. Okay, to blend over these, I'll put the template down. And remember, this has two openings and I'll ink them different colors. Because I want to ink those two areas different colors, I'll use a small blending brush. For the broom, I'm using scattered straw first. You could just do that yellow if you wanted to. And then for the hat, I'm using Hero Arts charcoal ink. This is a great dark gray. Then I came in with a little gathered twigs and just put a touch of that at the bottom of the broom opening. And then we can switch on to the next one. Now notice when I ink the hat, there is a white line left along like the brim of the hat. That's so I can go back and add a pop of red later on. Now these are small areas and you could instead choose to color them with markers, but this really, I believe, is a time saver because you get into that rhythm and you can make lots of them at once. Now if I was only coloring one or two of these snowman images, I wouldn't take the time to do the template. This is definitely a technique that is incredibly helpful when you're batch making cards or mass producing cards. So quickly put down yellow, a little bit of brown, and then charcoal on the hat. Okay, so after I have done that for all of these panels, we can move on to the touches of color that I'll do with a marker. I just felt this was faster than creating a template, so I put a little red on that brim of his hat, and then I put brown along the arms, those twig arms. You could skip that, but I thought it really helped to pull it all together. And then a touch of orange on his nose. I'm only using one color for each of these. No sense in doing any kind of blending because it is a small area. Okay, now for the little final touches here, I'm drawing a black line with just a black pen here to make a division between the gray and the red on his hat. That's a little alteration I made to the stamped image. You can always change images up very easily like this. I'll save the rest of the details for these images till later on. Next, let's create our card bases. I'm going to make a bunch at once. I have top folding note cards here that I created with Hero Art's Mist cardstock, and I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Snowflake Visions 3D embossing folder. I'm placing the front part of our card into the folder, running it through our die cut machine, and I'll get a beautiful snowflake texture for the note card. And I'll do this to all the card panels. When I mass produce cards like this, I like to do all of the same step at once. Next, I have the Simon Says Stamp Modern Postage dies. I thought it'd be fun to use one of the large rectangles here to mat our snowman panels. Now we can assemble all of our cards. Now I put a lot of dimension on these cards. You can skip that if you want, but I really wanted to add that touch. So what I have here are my snowman panels added to the Postage die cut. Then behind the Postage die cut, I glued 3 pieces of scrap cardstock. I just glued those back there for dimension. You could use foam tape, but when you're making a bunch of cards, it would be expensive to use that much foam tape, and these stacked scraps will hold up through the mail much better. So I'll glue those to the center of our embossing folder note cards, and I'll put something heavy on it while it dries. Notice how I've done all of these steps like in a batch, and then we're just assembling them all in the end. Okay, once those are assembled, it's time for any additional details. You could skip this if you want. I thought it'd be fun to add a little shimmer to the snowman using a Tonic Aqua shimmer pen. It's amazing how this really catches the light nicely, but you could also add maybe rock candy distress, glitter, many options for that touch of sparkle. For most of my cards, I added little black pearls for the eyes, but you could also use a black glaze pen. For the buttons on the snowman, I used a red pearl on some of the cards, and on some of the other cards, I just used a black glaze pen. It just depends on how much dimension you want to add to your card. Okay, so let's look at all the completed cards. I've got a bunch here. Again, I used a red envelope just for that pop of color. You can see the 2 different versions I did here. On the left, I did the pearls for the eyes and buttons. On the right, I used the black glaze pen instead. So this shows you that you can use this coloring hack even for simple images like this one and incorporate with lots of other things on the card. Also, don't be afraid to change up your image a little bit like I did on the hat there, just to add that little pop of red, that little opportunity for some red. And you can see the shimmer that we got by quickly using the shimmer pen. By the way, I did die cut a large Postage white die cut to put on the inside of the card, just pulling the inside and the outside of the design together. Okay, next I just wanted to quickly show you some reindeer tags that I created. I'm going to make a bunch more of these off screen. For this one, I used the Simon Says Stamp Nested Tags die set. This is a great tag set that has different toppers and different size tags. I cut a bunch from the Brutus Monroe white cardstock, and I added a little reinforcement on the top in fog cardstock. On those tags, I stamped the reindeer image along with one of the sentiments from that Tim Holtz stamp set. Now here I have my first template, which cuts out the wreath. Now I wanted to give you a little tip here. You don't have to cut out each of those ornaments. I cut out most. There was one there that I couldn't. You can just cover those with other colors or with accents like gems or pearls. So I cut out that wreath there, doing 2 shades of green over it. I have the Mowed Lawn and the Rustic Wilderness. And then I have a second template, you can see up there on the top left, that will do just the reindeer. So for this tag, I only created 2 templates. It helped me to get that green ink down on the wreath, the brown ink down on the reindeer, and the rest we can finish up with markers. So let's look at some of the different options I did here. Now on this one, I thought it'd be fun if I put a red pearl on each of the ornaments. So you have that dimension. This will be great to tie onto a gift or a gift bag. I just put a dot of Gina K Connect liquid adhesive and then place the pearl in place. Now in this case, I could have just created a wreath mask that cut out the wreath and not the ornaments because we're covering up those little openings anyways, but I wanted to show you a few different options. For some of the others, I thought I would do colorful coloring with some markers. You could use whatever coloring medium you want. I did red for the nose of the reindeer. I did different color ornaments, just quickly putting color down. So in this case, I did a touch of shading. You can see here I'm coming in with just a touch of dark red, just to give a little shading to that reindeer nose, but you could definitely skip it. So I'll color all of these ornaments. That one ornament that is inked green, I'll just put a dark blue on that. So we have a dark blue ornament. Now you can see up at the top right there, we have our wreath where we did the red berries. I also did one next to that that has silver and gold ornaments on it. So you can really change these up and get different looks. I did a little bit of Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen on the nose, and then I put glossy accents on the nose and the ornaments. Now, glossy accents are great because they give a little bit of shine, or a lot of shine, and some dimension, but you do need to set it aside and give it time to dry. I did add some jute or some twine to the top of this. You could use baker's twine or ribbon, whatever you have on hand. So let's look at the different options we have here. First, I did several that have the colorful ornaments with the glossy accents on top. Then we have the options where we put the gems on top, which would be a big time saver because you could just cut out the wreath and not worry about cutting out each of those ornaments. So I have all of these ready now for holiday gifts, and I've already cut and assembled a bunch of other die cuts. I just need to add the stamping and coloring. I think I'll do some with snowmen and some with the Santa too, since I already have those templates made. All right, there you have it. My favorite way to do fast coloring, especially when mass producing. This works great with any outline images, but these ones from Tim Holtz are a perfect match. If you're interested in what I used today, check the description below here on YouTube. And at the end here, I will link to 2 other videos that I've done a similar technique with a couple variations if you're looking for more inspiration. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll be back soon with another video.